Okay, you guys, if everybody could get in their seats, we're going to go to Dr. Barb Fox. She has been involved ever since I got involved with the animal conference. Dr. Fox has been there, and her work is just unreal. She has all kinds of educational training videos, internet type trainings. She's been in the natural health for many years as a veterinarian, and she has just a huge love for what all we're doing. She also is one that does consultations and has a huge knowledge, you guys, and is just such a giver and such a share person. If you haven't ever had the opportunity to watch her live, you've missed out. And so needless to say, she's also from back east, and it just wasn't a time that she felt okay to travel. And she said, I will not wear a mask. So anyway, our next best deal was to bring her to you guys on video. Another thing that's pretty cool, if you guys don't realize, is we are going to do a panel the last day, and these guys will be zoomed in. So if you want to ask Susan questions, or you want to ask Barb a question, we're going to be able to have that interaction. Okay, so I'm going to let it go with Dr. Fox.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining me and everyone else for the second annual Holistic Health for Animals Conference. I'm really excited to be a part of this conference, although I wish it were in person to see you and meet you and chat, get to know you better, but this is the next best thing. So today I want to talk to you about a topic that's really near and dear to my heart, entitled Vaccines. Are they your animal's friend or foe? My name is Dr. Barb Fox. I am a holistic practitioner in Northeast Iowa, and I have practiced holistic medicine for the last 14 and a half years. And I've been in practice for almost 28 now. So half of my career has been devoted to serving animals with natural products and therapies to get them well, rather than relying on big pharma and a lot of the drugs and medications that are out there. I also started a movement called the Natural Animal Health Movement, and I really feel strongly about this because there's still so many animals that are being harmed, or at least not even helped with conventional medications and treatments. So if we can get our animals on a natural plane, meaning a diet that is appropriate for them, eliminating as many of the chemicals and unnatural substances that they're exposed to out of their systems and out of their environment, we'll have a much happier, healthier animal. So we can get started here, but first of all, I'm just going to give you my little personal disclaimer on vaccines. I still vaccinate animals. I am not anti-vaccine. I am not pro-vaccine. I'm pro-education and information. And in my opinion, after being in practice so many years, I see animals that are injured by vaccines. Maybe their health is deteriorated because of a vaccination, or I see over-vaccinating all the time. And not only is that not good for your animal's health, but it's not always good on your pocketbook either. And then you have less money to spend on the things that are really important for your animals. So with all that said, let's get started. Here's my little disclaimer that I have to put in this presentation. I'll just give you a few seconds to read through it. So you might wonder why vaccines were invented. And I think you have a pretty good idea of what a vaccine does, but let's just talk about it for a minute. So in a nutshell, a vaccine is intended to prevent a specific disease by stimulating the immune system to produce antibodies and other cells that intercept viruses or bacteria before they can cause illness. So this is a method of prevention. A vaccination is also a medical procedure and should never be taken lightly. A vaccine actually includes the same germ, whether it's a virus or bacteria, that causes disease, but it's been changed or altered or weakened, attenuated when added to a vaccine, so it doesn't cause actual illness. Many diseases like canine distemper and parvovirus, these diseases have been greatly reduced in number with the advent of vaccines. Excuse me. Now, I want to go over the immune system very, very basically. I'm going to call it my 101 class because immunology is very complicated. It was one of the most challenging courses that I had to take in vet school to get through. It was only a 2-hour credit course, but it's very involved, and I'm just glad that I have that basic understanding of it, because if I go deep into immunology, I've got to get out a book or notes or the internet and help me through it. So I don't want to bore you or put you to sleep with all the details. But if you have a basic understanding of how the immune system works, you'll understand a lot of what I'm going to say in this presentation. So for those of you who are old enough to remember Pac-Man, this graphic on the right-hand side of the screen is a Pac-Man. Pac-Man is one of the first electronic games to come out, and it was fun. It was addictive. So for those of you who don't know who Pac-Man or what Pac-Man game is, this is a sphere with this mouth open, and it goes around the screen. You push a knob and you have the Pac-Man go any direction, all directions, and trying to get up, you gobble up these little yellow circles. And the more circles that you gobble up, the higher your score is. But you have to watch out for the monster that's out to destroy Pac-Man. And if Pac-Man isn't paying attention when he's going around, this monster can come down and take him out. So there's a certain type of white blood cell called a macrophage. And what macrophages do is they go out and they eat up all of the toxins, the microbes, the germs, whatever you want to call them, before they have a chance to infect the cell. So this is what I remember a macrophage like. They're going out and eating up everything that shouldn't be there. And then there's other cells that start mass producing antibodies, and I'm sure you know what antibodies are. They're the cells that fight infection, and they counteract antigens. An antigen is a virus, bacteria, or other microbe that causes disease. And then still other cells like the T killer cells act like warriors. They are actually little army men, soldiers, that go out and if a cell with me. Okay, so moving on to tears and saliva. There are actual enzymes in tears and saliva that neutralize toxins and bacteria. So if you think about it, if your dog or kitty is outside and it comes across something that died a little while ago and it wants to eat it, there are enzymes in the saliva that help break that up, so neutralize it, I should say, so that the germs don't have a chance to cause disease. And then sweat removes toxins and cools the body. So there's all these amazing things going on that help support health. And going on, I'm kind of talking about sweat and fever together. You know, if you have a fever and all of a sudden you start to sweat and you get these cold chills and then your fever's gone, that's another mechanism here. So fever isn't always a bad thing, because what it does is it makes too warm of an environment for viruses and bacteria to survive. That's the goal of the fever. Now, if you've got 104, 105 temperature, that's a different story. Then it gets to be a little bit dangerous. But a mild fever, low-grade fever, that's the immune system kicking in, and it shouldn't always be messed with. Fevers are not always bad. And then if through the process of urinating or defecating, it also, those two processes get rid of a lot of microbes and toxins from the body. I know it's kind of gross to talk about, but that's what we're here for. Okay, or what they're there for. And then HCl, hydrochloric acid, or what we call stomach acid, creates an acidic environment, which is oftentimes too harsh for any pathogens to survive. So even dogs and cats have a lower pH of in their stomach acid than we do. So that's why they can eat more things and not get sick, like we would maybe get food poisoning more often than they would. So you might wonder, with all this wonderful, this beautiful, or beautifully orchestrated immune system, why would we even work harder? Thinking about chemicals in your fly sprays for your horses, your insecticides, like for your flea, tick, and heartworm products, yard and garden, anything you clean the house with, there's also a stressor on the body. So, how many of you think that vaccines have a 100% money back guarantee? No. There's no vaccine that's 100% effective. There's several reasons for this, and the first one is what we call interference from the mother's antibodies, maternal antibodies that are passed through the milk. So if you some of these breeding facilities, and I don't want to step on any toes or put my foot in my mouth here, but some of these breeding kennels are giving vaccines at 3 to 4 weeks of age, and sometimes kennel cough at 2 weeks of age. Yeah, the product is labeled for that, but here's what happens, is that if the puppies are already protected by the mom's antibodies, the vaccine is intended for that animal, that puppy or that kitten, to start producing their own antibodies. They're not doing that when they're under the influence of mom's protection. So there's this window, what we call a window of vulnerability, that's in between the mom's antibodies fading off and the puppy or the kitten's ability to start producing their own immune cells. This is why we vaccinate at intervals throughout the puppyhood or the kittenhood, because we want to make sure that they are still producing, are still going to mount a response to the vaccine. So if you vaccinate too early, say like especially before weaning them, it's probably a waste of your money. You can use other things to support their immune system and keep them healthy. There's a lot of things we can do. That's another workshop, another day. Okay, so vaccines vary in efficacy. One of the most effective vaccines, from what I have researched, this is not always accepted, but I believe from what I've read that the parvovirus vaccine is very effective. I guess I've never seen a breakthrough in 28 years of parvo that has been given properly to a puppy. Now, our older dogs, as they age, and sometimes genetics play a factor in this, that genetics will if they have bad genes, then the dog isn't going to not going to mount a good response to the vaccine. But for the most part, parvo has about, on the average, 90% efficacy. On the other hand, your Bordetella, kennel cough vaccines only have about 50%. And a good example of this is, I have a really good friend of mine. She was a past president of one of our humane shelters in one of the cities in here north. Something else going on, then that can interfere with the way that the vaccine works in an animal too. So why are vaccines pushed hard by conventional veterinarians? I'm going to tell you a few dirty little truths here, but a lot of my colleagues, not my holistic colleagues, but my conventionally trained veterinary friends, still think that the vaccines are the primary way to keep your animal healthy. You give it a distemper shot, it's not going to get distemper. You give it a Lyme shot, it won't get Lyme. Going back to the previous slide, for the reasons I mentioned, we cannot depend on that. But if one of your veterinarians is very adamant about getting your animal vaccinated, oftentimes it's not because they want to make you feel guilty, it's just because they feel very strongly about it. The second little dirty truth here is that vaccines are a huge part of the veterinary clinic income. So you bring your animal in if it's sick, But animals don't get sick every month. Veterinary clinics have a huge overhead. They have to buy their own equipment. They don't share with other like issues. Those are some things that you wouldn't be able to do at home. But if that same reminder card had that semi-annual exam that's due, and it also had a list of maybe 3 or 4 vaccines, maybe a fecal exam and a heartworm test, you'd make that appointment because you've been programmed to think that your animal needs vaccines. Where in my mind, I'd rather see the physical exam done and then talk about which vaccines your animal needs. Third little dirty secret here is that veterinarians often stress over liability or litigation. So in other words, if they don't push these things on you, or if you decline something and they don't rebut you, and your animal gets sick because you didn't push it, some people sue on that. Like the clients get ticked. This doesn't happen in my area of Northeast Iowa, but it has happened in your bigger cities. So this is another reason why some veterinarians will feel pressured and want to push you to doing something that you may feel that you don't want to do. Okay, so we've talked about how vaccines work and their purpose. Let's talk about what happens when vaccination goes wrong. This doesn't happen often, at least the life-threatening reactions, but more often than we'd like to realize or acknowledge, vaccine reactions do occur. And they can range from mild to life-threatening.